guys, I'm Amy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally sitting down to do the Booktube Top Tens tag. This is a tag that was created by Jason at Chapter and Verse, in which he's asked booktubers to rank their top 10 favorite books of all time. It's up to you as the reader to determine how you're going to rank said books, and then he's been compiling a giant list to see what Booktube's favorite books are. I had to give myself a lot of time to think about this because I can tell you what my favorite books are, but very rarely do I actually rank them. Like, I've never even forced myself for like my favorite books of the year videos to rank those because I just try to avoid that stress in my life. But for the sake of this video, I have done it, and like I said, I have sat on these decisions and thoughts and ratings for a long time because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't just going on a whim or picking books that I feel were fresh in my mind or that just at that moment were really catching my fancy. Granted, that being said, I do feel that if I did this in 2 months from now, it might be a little bit different. But for right now, in this moment, these are my top 10 favorite books, and they will be ranked in order from 10 to 1, 1 being my most favorite. So, without further ado, let's get to my top 10 favorite books. Coming in at number 10 is a book that I read this last summer that just blew me away. This was a book that I thought and was pretty sure that I would enjoy, but I absolutely adored this book, and that is I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith. This is the story of Cassandra Mortmain, who is a young girl. This is a coming-of-age story, and you are reading her diaries, and she's talking about her very eccentric family, her writer father who hasn't written a book in over 10 years, her very eccentric stepmother, her siblings, and her experiences with the very wealthy American heirs to the estate that they live on. And I really just, this book was beautiful. I related to Cassandra in ways that I've related to very few characters, which is the reason why it's coming in at number 10. I will say I feel like this book has been on a lot of the Booktube Top Tens tag lists of many people, and I think that's for good reason. And that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I'm not going to go into what the story is about. I feel like you all know, but I have to say that I just found this classic to be incredibly readable. I was very intimidated by it before I sat down to read it, and I'm glad that I read it when I did. As an adult, I think I would have not enjoyed it as much had I read it 10 years prior, even 5 years prior. And this is a book I know I will go back and reread time and time again because it just has that rereadability factor that I really want to see in books, and this has it tenfold. Now, for the only nonfiction book on this list, I have Ex Libris, Confessions of a Common Reader by Anne Fadiman. This is an essay collection that is just a celebration of her love of reading. It's about her growing up with parents who were both writers and readers, and a brother who's a reader, and marrying a reader, and it's really just a celebration of being a reader, and I adore this book. I think it's very sweet. I find it, I see myself in it. This might be a reoccurring theme. I highly recommend this book, obviously, as it is in my top 10 favorite books of all time, but if you enjoy a good commentary on the love of reading, you definitely should pick this book up. I also felt that I couldn't not include Tamara Pierce on this list because when I found her books when I was young, I think it really propelled me to be the reader that I am. I've always been a reader, and I've talked about that in some of my videos before, but she really helped to foster that love of reading. And for the sake of this ranking system, I'm going to include the Immortal series by Tamara Pierce. This is a quartet in which we follow Dane, who is a young girl at the beginning of this. I think she's about 13, who has a magical affinity for animals, and I adore this fantasy world. It is a world in which women are fighting for their rights and trying to not stay in the domestic realm of things. And I just think it's a celebration of fantasy and equality and really cool magic systems. So I couldn't not include this. This is, I would probably put between, like, I would probably qualify this as a YA reads, especially as the series continues. This is just a part of the giant world that Tamara Pierce has created, and I highly recommend her, but I have to say that these are my favorites of her books. I also have a translated work on this list, and that is The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Soon-Mi Wong and translated from the Korean by Chi-Young Kim. This is an anthropomorphic story about a barnyard, and our main character is Sprout, an egg-laying hen who all she wants in life is to raise one of her own eggs. She wants to be a mother, and when she has the opportunity to escape the coop, this is about her experiences in motherhood and in friendship. And the fact that this book is so tiny and there is such beautiful writing and whimsy, all placed onto the backdrop of dealing with really hard, horrible things that happen in life, grief and loss and longing. This book astounds me. I think about this book and it's a stunning piece of art, and I adore it so very much. The next book on the list, moving on up, is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is the really incredible story of Margaret Hale, who is a young woman whose father decides that he can no longer consciously be a participant or teacher of church and the religion, and so they move up north from the south of England into a milling and manufacturing town, in which Margaret Hale comes into contact with John Thornton, who is one of the local mill owners. And this is about them expanding their horizons and learning that there's more than one way that the world functions and what people want out of life and the effects that class have on people. And I've read this book twice now, at least twice, and I have only loved it more and more every time that I've read it. I think Gaskell has this incredible understanding of human nature that very few authors have managed to capture, and I will continue to read this book for the rest of my life. This next book probably will not come as a surprise to anyone, because that is The Butcher's Hook by Janet Ellis. This is, of course, the story about a young woman who's really dissatisfied with life. She wants really nothing to do with it until she meets the butcher's apprentice Fub and falls in love with him. And this is about her attempt to have a relationship with that man, all the while her father's trying to arrange a marriage for her to an older gentleman that she really doesn't like. And this book, I had like physical reactions to it. There are scenes in this book in which my stomach physically rolled because of how apt Ellis was and capable she was of depicting and describing a scene. This book is a book that introduced me to the fact that books don't have to be all wonderful, happy-go-lucky to be wonderful and for you to enjoy it as a reader. I adore this book. I've talked about it a lot, but that's for good reason. It's for a very good reason. When I first thought about this list and compiling and ranking these books, this was the one book that I knew would be somewhere on that list, regardless. This was the instantaneous, this is a top 10, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is the first classic that I ever read. This is the classic that I've read the most. And I think part of the reason that I adore this story so much is because it's always been a part of my life in many ways. And I have a family that's very similar to the March family. And the sense of family and companionship and the stress on relationships and the choices that you make in life woven throughout this book has always captured me. And I don't think it's a book I'll ever walk away from. I have a very special place in my heart for the March family, and I really have no anticipation of that ever changing. It is a large book, but it is one of those classics that I find very easy to read, and it's really time for a reread, but I couldn't not include this book on this list. Now, for the runner-up to my favorite book of all time, it is technically a short story collection, but I have always said that I think it reads like a novel, and that is The Tsar of Love and Techno by Anthony Marra. This story / stories floored me the first time I read it. Marra's prose is something that, in my opinion, is out of this world, and so few authors have his ability to turn a phrase. The characters in this book are visceral and real, and you feel for them, whether they are an antagonist or a protagonist. And through all these stories, there's this obscure Russian painting that's referred to, or sometimes a more central part of a story. And I very fondly look back on my reading experience of this book. It's one of those books I have trouble describing because I love it so much. And I just feel like Marra was able to discuss and talk about and bring up so many different topics and events in a person's life in this book in such a successful way. So many times I think authors bite off more than they can chew, and it just, in the end, falls short. This is not the case in this book, which is one of the reasons why I love it so much, because he's so very successful in his approach of writing it. Do we need a drum roll? Maybe we need a drum roll. And for my favorite book of all time, which is in desperate need of a reread, I have A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a book that I picked up before I was on Booktube. I knew a friend of mine in high school had really enjoyed it, and it had been on my radar, but I had no idea what I was in for when I picked this book up. Betty Smith's writing speaks to my soul. There is something about the way she writes and her characters that just work for me. This book has no plot. It really has no plot other than it is a coming of age story about a little girl growing up in Brooklyn in poverty with a younger brother and a mom and an alcoholic father, and not much happens, but it's so stunningly gorgeous. And you just get so wrapped up in this little girl's world and her attempt to become her own person that it just flies by. And there's so many moments that are just so beautiful. I love this book. I love Smith's writing. She just works for me. It's another one of those books, a lot of these books, that I just have trouble describing because I have so much love and adoration for them. But this one, here is my top spot, ladies and gentlemen, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Okay guys, we did it. I picked my top 10 favorite books of all time and ranked them. Like I said, this video is a long time coming because I needed to take my time to determine what books were going to sit where. If you guys haven't done this video and you want to, then I tag you. I highly encourage you to do it. It was good for me, I think, to think so critically about the books that I do love. And these are books that are just really a quintessential part of my life as a reader, and all books that I would recommend very highly, of course, and have every intention of rereading if I haven't reread them yet. So if you guys like this video, please like it, and if you loved it, please subscribe, and we'll see you in my next video. Happy reading.